that's why he's in Luxembourg and why his grave is in that position now. Now we're going to go over to one here, want to carry on that tradition. They tend to pick up a dirty old stone from the flower bed, put it on the nice white marble, and then when it rains it discolours the stone. So a few years ago, Mr. Lee Atkinson, who's the superintendent here, went down to one of the aquarium supply shops, bought a big sack of these nice white 60s or 70s. Again, her family originated in Luxembourg. I'm going to come down a peg, and I apologise if anybody comes from Illinois and voted for Dennis Hastert, last Speaker of the House of Congress, but his family emigrated from a village called Osweiler, which is out on the eastern border, again in the 19th century. And then there's a Private Phil Weiss buried here. He was killed on the 6th of January 45, fighting to liberate the little town of Wiltz up in the north of the country, and he was killed just 6 miles from where his grandfather was born, and in the 19th century had emigrated to Minnesota. There are certainly more people in America with Luxembourgish ancestors than there are Luxembourgers in Luxembourg today. Now, it always brings it home to me what we actually do owe these ladies and gentlemen. It says, never forget, heroes, all are left in death, never more to draw a breath, for ever deserving fervent prayer, while reposing in hallowed lair. Easily once tearful eye forgets those wars left in foreign crypts, removed from life and family, now deserving more than elegy, an enduring peace, our hero's legacy. I think that's quite, well, it hits the nail right on the head, as we say. Now, the inscriptions on the headstones. You have the name, of course, you have the rank, the unit, the division, and the state. And the state is always the state of entry into the military service, so it may not be the state of birth. The resurrection is passing from one state to another. You have the dolphins here jumping out of the water into the air, one state to another. It's a very nice theory. I wasn't going to argue with a priest, particularly not with a Jesuit, but an interesting fact, though. I was reading a book a few years ago about Patton's eldest son, and in there it says that Mrs. Patton, who believed in reincarnation, had said at one time, if ever she was reincarnated, she wouldn't mind coming back as a dolphin because they are such fantastic creatures. Whether there is any eternal connection there, I don't know. So, ladies and gentlemen, the American Military Cemetery. We try to get away in about 20 minutes. German name, and to be honest, I can read it to you from the poster here on the left-hand side of cemeteries. They don't have a permanent staff here, by the way. There's a gentleman who comes to run the office and take visitors to find particular graves, and then of course the grass is cut by local people. But through the year, very often German service people come down here for a few days to help maintain the cemetery, and also sometimes during the vacation season, German school kids are brought here as well. They help maintain the cemetery. Tree in the middle, and just in front of the tree you can just see that there are 3 gravestones right next to each other and 4 gravestones right next to each other. What they basically did, the bodies were temporarily buried, and then they exhumed the bodies and basically laid out the permanent graves just about where the temporary ones were. But when they opened the temporary graves over there, the remains were so closely entwined that they didn't feel they wanted to try and separate them. They managed to identify some they didn't, but so basically they've got 3 permanent graves right next to each other, this close, and 4, and that's the reason for that. Some of the bodies are themselves. They fought with bravery and dignity. They didn't want to fight, but if you got the enemy in the sights of your rifle, you had to pull the trigger before he did, that's for sure. And they came here with bitter mourning. Great they still wanted to honour these other soldiers who just like them. Now let's try and get them. And of course a lot of people coming here, gentlemen here as well. The other group is on their way down. The two jumbo jets can go in, they'll be able to close the doors in the winter and do all the servicing there. And that's why they've had to build the new radar tower. You can see the big one there, the smaller one just hidden now by the hangar. Luxair is the national passenger carrier, is operating passengers.
It was the same year. So the fortress was destroyed, was dismantled. In only 16 years they had destroyed nearly all the fortifications. See everywhere, all around. See also the modern area, a little bit backwards. See the railroad line to the right, that's the line to the battleground. And you see the holes in the rock on the right, and you see here the towers of Germany. It's okay. Millions and millions of years ago, there was here the ice sea. Now here where the works are standing, the first convent, the Benedictine monks had built on the repeatless military attacks. Now a very curious house here on our right is sick. You see the problem of the algae coming up from the ground. The big tower, Tiergate, the other half-round towers, the old buildings, barracks for the soldiers. This was always a garrison tower of a tower. Well, here in the underground, it can be visited the galleries, the subterranean fortification system. And to the left now, the walls, that's the new Luxembourgish court city. Straight ahead, the entrance to the city.
Mum, and schwer in Luxembourgish, schwer in German also means heavy, so there you get the joke. Now just to reassure you, because you'll be crossing that bridge after lunch, before they opened it to traffic they borrowed 12. Unfortunately, of course, a lot of the very nice old buildings, particularly from the 19th century, where the ladies are just crossing from, at the far end of that street you'll see an old building. It looks a little bit like a church, there's a steeple on the top. It's the Foundation Pescator, which is a very Patton used some of those passageways as a bunker. So Patton's headquarters off to the right. Now, talking about ugly buildings, the monstrosity here on the left, the Forum Roller building on the left. In the money markets, BCCI was always known as the Bank of built on the site of a very nice old villa. Condoleezza Rice stayed there about 3 years ago just for one night. If you look into this street on the right, which leads to a very nice ring of parks on the northern side of the city, you can see some of the older types of architecture we used to have here in the city as well. Now, I mentioned how expensive Luxembourg is for shopping, but colourful lady with a large bottom. It's by the late French artist Nicky de Saint-Phal. In 1995, Luxembourg was a cultural capital of Europe. Other side, on the right-hand side of the bridge, that's where General Bradley, Omar Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, had his headquarters. Look into the street on the left, you'll see a building with an eagle on the roof. I was mentioning in the cemetery about Luxembourgers who emigrated in the 19th century to the United States, fighting the Germans in the First World War. Nazi Germany invaded Luxembourg on the 10th of May 1940. They'd always had this thing about the Luxembourgish people. They claimed they were Germanic. They said the language spoken here is a Germanic language. So commandos, and the other religious orders were very jealous of the Jesuits. The Bourbon family put pressure on Pope Clement, who in 1773 suspended the order worldwide. When they left the city of Luxembourg, the church of the school eventually became the parish church of the city of Luxembourg. Its name was changed to Notre Dame. In 1870, Pope Pius IX gave Luxembourg its own bishop, up until then the Bishop of Trier, where you were yesterday for the Luxembourgish bishop. So in 1870, the church became a cathedral, but it wasn't until 1935 they started to build the part we're standing in front. This is a neo-Gothic style of architecture, and it was added on to that original Jesuit church to form a traditional Atlantic cross. Below it, the crypt where the tomb of the Luxembourg royal family. Another reason for not taking into church today the Madonna statue, the solitatrix of Victoria, comfortably thinking,